We're recording.
We're recording.
We're recording. Of course, that's the kind of expression you know well, Albert, being a filmmaker, of course. Action.
Yes. Action.
And you were saying just now that you're sort of a filmmaker by day and a laugher by night.
Yeah. I feel sometimes a little split because it's a different world. I'm a documentary filmmaker, often during the day, and then at night I'm a laughologist, where I'm often doing laughter events. Or I mean, it's not always night and day, but it's kind of like that. It feels that way.
Yes, I'm going to mention that because you are a laughologist. You're the founder of Laugh-A-Size, or the creator of Laugh-A-Size, and also the founder of the Laughing Championships. So it's really great in your busy filmmaking and laughing life, Albert, to be able to have this little sort of joy conversation with you, because
yes,
as you know, there are the two basic questions, and question number one, Albert, is what is joy to you? What does joy mean to you?
I'm going to try to give you like two interesting answers. I think that we've been experiencing joy laughing together, and I guess one of the questions one asks oneself, are these things real, or do they really matter? And I was actually very interested in the sort of concept of the source of joy. Where does joy come from, let's say, in our world or our planet? And I was struck by there's some very beautiful time-lapse photography of ponds, small ponds, in the spring, where it's just all you're doing is watching the sun rise gradually. And if you see it, this is a time-lapse film. You see the insects sort of hopping up and down. You see the frogs jumping. The birds start chirping, and you see this. You see that joy is an elemental part of life, even non-mammalian life on this planet, which was a bit of a surprise to me, because I thought joy was really like a mammal's kind of feeling.
Nice.
So that's my first answer, is that it really is in sunrise. If you watch life, you can often see joy in its elemental forms. The other thing I would say is that there's a really interesting question about joy itself around the issue of happiness. So famously, the American Constitution was built around the pursuit of happiness, and it popularized the idea that happiness was like the goal of mankind. And this confused a lot of people, because if people ask you, are you happy? It's a hard question to answer, because what is happiness? Happiness is hard to find. You might describe someone as being happy or unhappy, but it actually has no clear measure. As opposed to, some people have suggested that joy is actually measurable. You can sort of break down the chemistry of it. The structural reality of joy is in fact more meaningful, and the pursuit of joy might be more valuable than the pursuit of happiness.
Oh, very nice. Yes. Yeah.
So that's my thinking on it, and I think that you can, so that we know that through laughter, but maybe not just through laughter, probably through singing, dancing, many other things, we are in the pursuit of joy, and the pursuit of joy is its own reward.
Yes.
It makes us feel meaningful. It makes us feel good, and our bodies, respond well to it. We even know the chemistry of it. When we bond with, I was struck by this, that there's now new evidence or new research around the difference between serotonin and dopamine. So these are both reward hormones for let's say, doing the right thing for us. And I was struck by the fact that dopamine often involves a certain amount of risk. So I think when you go to a laughter group, or you go to something you haven't done before, and it works, you then get a shot of dopamine, and you feel pleasure, and maybe you're sharing dopamine. So literally, that's part of joy. You're sharing dopamine reward with your friends or acquaintances, And serotonin is different, apparently, that serotonin has more to do with familiar reward. So you go back home after the laughter meeting
Nice.
and you see your family or your dog, and your dog runs up to you and there's your dog again, and then you have this warm kind of old time feeling, and that's more serotonin. And
Very.
so I think that these are different dimensions of joy.
Yep.
But joy, as you know, is many things. Sorry, go ahead. I feel you want to say something.
No, it's just fascinating. I'm really so struck by what you said originally, that joy is not restricted to mammals. Joy is in life. Joy is in the sunrise. Joy is in sort of life happening. You can sort of see it at the start of a day if you go outside, and um, uh, that's a really nice reminder, I think. Um,
You know, but famously, isn't it Longfellow, the poet, the American poet,
yes,
famously said that the earth laughs through flowers, and flowers themselves, they, when we look at them, a beautiful flower, we often experience joy, but it may be that the reason is that the flower is experiencing joy. It is joy.
it's such a
Um,
lovely dimension.
and
Yes. So the idea,
yeah, I think,
yes, the idea that nature
but that said,
is laughing at us or laughing with us. Um, um,
yes, and also if somebody was to ask me, and you were sort of hinting this way, what is the source of joy in our world? I actually think there's I kind of I thought about for a long time. I thought, is it water, because we like waterfalls? Is it happy energy? And it's actually pretty clear what the source of joy is in our world. It is the sun. The sun is the source of joy. You can't really get joy without the sun. And flowers, the reason why they are so beautiful is they mirror the sun. And it's funny because one of the first things you learn in life is, like, in ancient times people used to worship the moon and the sun, and they were primitive and ridiculous. And I was thinking about trying to restart sun worship, because there's a lot of arguments for sun worship, by the way. Maybe not in the UK, where you rarely see it.
In a way, you're then sort of hinted at sort of question number two, or the answer to question number two, which is how important is it to you? Um, um, because I'm feeling that is kind of it's exuding sort of from what you've already said, but presumably a joy is something that is um, it's important in your life.
Yeah, I think that I think I had let's say, a awakening. This is probably a good 20 years ago or 15 years ago, where I can tell you the story. I'll try to tell you as quickly as I can. What brought me to laughter, more, the sort of route to laughter, is that I was working in the satire business. So I was doing films, and I would do these. I was very lucky in the sense that I was able to get network commissions to do very risky films. One of them was, I would take actors and put them into public political situations. So in Canada, where I'm from, the prime minister would be walking from a meeting to another meeting, or making a public appearance, and we would put actors in with the surrounding the prime minister, who would then act like buffoons, and we would film. We would tell a story based on. And when you watched it, you would think that this was the security detail for the actual head of state of Canada, and then doing ludicrous things. And at one point, I was detained by the police. We all were, and they were like, "Why are you doing this?" They also threatened, to arrest us and impound our equipment, and it caused me to question, what was I really doing this? Why was I taking so many risks? And the answer to me was that I was in search of sort of the ultimate joke, and that's a sort of Monty Python-esque concept that you could arrive at the ultimate joke if you created the funniest situation possible and you showed it to people. Then there was some objective measure that you had arrived at the funniest moment possible. And that really was my question. If you go to comedy clubs or the comedy world, it's really a hierarchy, is who has arrived at the most funny concepts, and
Yeah.
I was in that game. And I happened to see, so one thing that woke me up is I saw an interview with Tom Green, a Canadian comedian, succeeded in America. And he told a story about how he was driving on a shoot once on a road, I think in Colorado, and they saw a dead moose lying on the side of the road. And so, Tom Green had this great idea. He basically went out and he said, roll the cameras, and he stuck his head up the dead moose's ass. Right, that's what he did. And I was like, and he described like he threw up afterwards because he stuck his head in a corpse, and I remember thinking, is this what you have to do to make people laugh? That you have to up the ante of shock and horror. And I realized that this was a fool's game. It was heading, and in my own life, everything was getting more dangerous.
Yeah.
And I suddenly realized, so I asked myself, what am I really looking for? Am I looking for the ultimate joke? And I realized, no, I'm actually looking for something else. It was the laughter. That's what I was really looking for. And when I realized that, everything changed. I realized that laughing with people, sharing laughter is really what counts. The joke is just the doorway. It's just the portal.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I suddenly I realized like laughter is like an amazing subject. I found that no one had ever made a documentary about laughter. Many documentaries about humor. So people think, well, that's laughter, but we know it's not.
Yes.
And then that kind of blew the doors open for me. That I was able to get this film commissioned. I met Madame Kataria, got trained in laughter yoga, and I think that this is still something the world doesn't know. The world is still chasing the ultimate joke,
Yeah.
and this is like this classic example of it's an external goal when in fact the answer has been right here all along.
Yes. Yes.
The laughter is there. You don't have to go that far.
Fantastic. In a way, the ultimate joke is that there isn't a joke, or the joke's on us, or
Yes,
it's right here, right now.
that's right. It's something that we already had. We all have. It's a human universal, and it's the appreciation of these qualities, which is what the laughter movement's about. Is like it's about deeper appreciation for that we laugh together, that everybody in every country can laugh together, regardless of civilization. These are wonderful things that we're just actually on some level beginning to explore. Our ability to share laughter with people that we can't even communicate with, let's say, is all very intriguing. And I also believe crazy things like you can laugh with the dead. I think it's possible to laugh with the dead. It sounds simply because I know how strange it sounds, but people that have passed, famous. It depends on your spiritual tradition. Like to be remembered, and the feeling is that it's good to talk about people that we appreciate that are no longer here.
Yeah.
And I can remember the laughs of wonderful people. I can remember their laughs, and when I feel their laughs, I can laugh with them. And I feel that memory is quite powerful.
Yes. I know time is pressing. Thank you very, very much, Albert. It's been absolutely fascinating. The one comment that sprang to mind when you were talking about everybody laughing together, when people laugh together, particularly when they really engage, when it's really coming from their heart, that is often an expression of joy through laughter. The laughter and the laughter yoga, when we intentionally connect sort of with each other.
There's a bunch.
The joy.
It's interesting. I'm very interested in the mystery. So I made a documentary called "You Are What You Act," and it's about sort of the emerging science of the way our bodies feed back to our brains to a certain extent. And there's a bunch of very interesting rules. So, for example, joy, almost as a rule, is expansive. So when people feel joy, they don't go like this. They don't go, "I am so happy to see you," and then contract. They always they
Yes.
expand, which is like flowers. Which is
Yes.
like flowers. This expand, and there's a kind of rule in our on our planet that expansive energies are both empowering and uplifting. Not always, but roughly
Yeah.
speaking,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
an interest. This pose, which is also known as the victory pose,
Yeah.
is a joyful pose.
Yes.
And it's interesting that it is also like laughter. The victory pose is a human universal, meaning it was actually a study done. They did it in Africa, where they found a remote tribe that had no social, no cultural connection to the outside world. And although other things can mean different, have different meanings, that the victory pose they recognize as universal. And it stands to reason that animals need a way to show that they've succeeded, that things are good. And so these outward expressions of joy not only tell us that we feel good, they tell others that we feel good. And we do it together. One of the things is never, a whole area of study that is unexplored? Cheering, which is like a huge expression of joy. And I'm sure and unfortunately, maybe it's limited to a little bit to the domain of sports, but when when a goal is scored, particularly in football or any major sports, this is one of my interests in sports as well, and the whole crowd erupts simultaneously. I don't know if you have this phenomena here, but in Montreal, where I'm from, there's enormous allegiance. People are fanatical about the hockey team.
Yeah.
It's also a very dense city, almost in the like a European city in some ways. When in the playoffs, when there is a goal scored in a key moment, the entire city shakes, and it's been measured. Actually, it's been measured on with earthquake detection equipment. It's not it's not 6.5 on the Richter scale, but the city shakes, and
Amazing.
it shows that, first of all, the power of joy to shake cities, but
Yeah.
also that these expressions are truly, I can't remember the exact how you'd call it, but we lose ourselves in them, and we
Yeah.
love it. We share it with everyone, and we even know that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that our team won. It doesn't make us better people, or it doesn't change the world. But for some reason, we love losing ourselves in these huge expressions of joy.
Oh,
And this is not well studied. And
no.
it's an interesting area that would be worth exploring, I think.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Albert, thank you very, very much. It's been just an amazing conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. Great questions, and it's a really interesting topic as well.
So thank you very, very much. Well, I look forward to sort of seeing you and maybe seeing flowers with you sometime and laughing with the flowers and all that. Thank you very, very much, Albert.
I love your idea, laughing with the flowers. Let's do that. Flowers.